All right, since I've continually threatened to make a screen recording of my workflow when it comes to Insta360 footage on the Mac, both in the Insta360 Studio program and Premiere, and maybe even After Effects, depending on the footage, finally getting around to it. So let's get started from the beginning. So to start things out, let's start with a folder of footage. These are just a couple random clips over the last few days. There's footage from commencement, and one clip from random flight over Seneca Creek that I figured, why not throw it in for fun? I haven't really gone through this footage, so I don't have like a plan or as to what I'm actually going to do with it, but that's half the fun of it. So normally what I do is, and ignore all this other stuff. This is old. Normally what I would do is take the folder from the camera, take all of the .insv files that are on the camera, and decide where I'm going to put them, and start with a folder called Insta360, either raw, or I'll just name it what the camera was. This is a mix of cameras. This is the X2, the Sphere, and maybe the 1-inch RS, but I'm just going to call this folder Insta360 raw. Drop it in there. And I'm going to make two other folders, and we can name them something like reframed and rendered 360. Actually, we're just going to change this. Rendered RF, and you'll see why later. Why the RF. So now when you get the files off the camera, they look a little less neat than they would using the phone app. Normally, each time you record a clip, there are 3 files generated. Now, I've only saved 2 for each clip. They are the ones that end in the same number. So 021, 021, that's a left lens and the right lens. It records basically 180 degrees on each side, and the software will combine them. Now, this is important. Do not rename these files. Don't separate them. Because what happens is when you drag them into the studio program, it knows to look for its partner, basically. It knows what the partner should be named, it knows where the partner should be, and it's going to do all of the magic in the background. If you move them and mess with them, you're going to have a bad time. So keep them together, just put them in a folder called raw, don't touch them, leave them there. Bob's your uncle, which is a phrase I don't understand. All right, so let's drag these in to Insta360. Come on, if we do it properly, there we go. Let it do its thing. Okay. Oh, that's a good look. So we have a drone shot from the Sphere here. We have a couple test shots that we were doing of the zip line that we can play with, and just for giggles, this shot going through Seneca Creek near where I live. So let's get started. First, really quick, the interface. So when you import files, they'll show up on the left here. This is, local files, the camera icon. If they're coming off an SD card, they'll show up there. You can do some stuff with this program like create projects and favorites, and you don't need to mess with any of that. If you're doing it on the computer, you might as well plan to work with Premiere, is my attitude. So I don't mess with favorites, and this is where when something's exporting, it'll go. On the right-hand side, you get your tools. So flow state, direction lock. Flow state you always want to have on because that's what does the stabilizing. So if you turn off the flow state, it also turns off the stitching optimization, blah, blah. Leave it on. And direction lock, that's just, it kind of keeps it looking the same cardinal direction that it is filming at any particular time, but you can still keyframe it. I guess that's kind of cool if you're doing, I have no idea. You can work with the stitching if you're having problems seeing the seam. This kind of thing is all, I just feel like this is a crapshoot. You just kind of flip switches until it looks good. If it looks bad, The calibrate button is really fun if you want to make it look horrible, but hey, do you. Processing, whatever. Logo, why'd you need it? Project management, again, useless to me. And file properties, if you didn't know that you could get this stuff elsewhere, it's also here. Finally, on the bottom, these are the things you're probably more familiar with from the app on the phone. You can change the aspect ratio. This is the aspect ratio it's going to render in, so it's important to consider that. I really like 2:3:5:1, but hey. You can take screenshots, go full screen if you feel so inclined. You can do the time shifting. Motion blur will turn on automatically with time shifting. Deep track, which is just like picking your target and let it kind of resolve where that person is the whole time. Or you could just do manual keyframes. Play, pause, mark in, mark out, etc., etc. And then finally your export button. Now, one thing that I think is a huge difference here versus on the phone, which is why this is so great, is, well, I shouldn't say it's so great. It's a better tool than the phone. It's because you can, when you're keyframing, you get such granular control over the exact angle you want to be, exact zoom, the exact lens warp, rotation. You can do it all with very fine detail control. Do another one, and then it does some very basic interpolation between keyframes, which if you're clever with, you can make look really good. And if this is not enough, then we will get into going into Premiere. So that's the interface. Let's make something funky. So let's take one of these tests. I'm just going to pick one at random here. So this troll up here is going to send the camera. And it does its thing. Let's just start out real quick with, we're going to mark in, start of our clip. We're going to mark out. And let's have it track in on Dear Carolina here. Wow, it's going to go slowly. What do I have running in the background? Okay, that's painfully slow. Wow, what is going on here? Okay, so it doesn't want to do that tonight, apparently. So we can do it manually. Let's make a keyframe. And let's make it seem as though the camera is flying actually faster than it is. And we can do that through creative keyframing here. So you can also see I'm dragging the keyframe around. I'm going to put the keyframe right here when the camera starts to move. Let's make it very wide angle, increase that fisheye, and zoom out as far as we can really get away with. And then, so I only can see the zipline mount, but it doesn't matter. We're just screwing around right now. So that's the first keyframe. Let's make the second one. As it passes Carolina, we can zoom in here too. So that's going to be number 2. And then as it goes past, let's have it whip around. So the camera's doing a little zoom and warp at the same time. I guess it doesn't really make it seem like it's going that much faster, to be honest. Kind of thought it would, but we can also go the reverse way of doing kind of the Hitchcock zoom where we start zoomed in. And right here, we're going to zoom way out and then just warp it. You can do the tiny planet kind of effect, but I am not really a fan. And all of a sudden, the camera's moving in as it zooms out, and you have a kind of backwards effect there. Now, if we're going to design this for a transition and do something funky that kind of resembles an FPV drone, what can we do? All right, let's do this. So when we get to Carolina, kind of more of a normal shot here. Normal shot. Actually, wait. There's a problem with this program where sometimes the keyframes don't seem like they're updating, and you have to kind of click back and forth between the two for the animation to actually display properly. So as the camera, one thing to think about with the animation and the transitions is as the camera moves forward, you want the movement of the lens, whether it's zooming, panning, tilting, rotating, whatever it's doing, you want it to be fluid, you want it to be consistent, and more importantly, you want it to match the next shot. So get here, and well, we already did that, but see, it didn't take. Let's starts. So we're doing a slower pan left, a little faster pan left here, and then we're just gonna whip pan it out the end. Do a full circle. Let's see how that works. I don't know. We'll zoom in at the same time. Why not? Too much. Way too much. Yeah. All right, maybe with motion blur that'll look better. But let's now also do a time remap. Beginning, make it 2x. Let's maybe even slow this part down here to be half speed. And then that's going to be our transition point. Not the greatest thing in the world, but, you know, what have you. Okay. So let's go back now. I hit export. We're going to the 360 samples folder. And because we have reframed the clip, I'm going to select rendered reframed. Open it up and give it a name. Zipline 1. First half, because it's 2-part transition, and then end at RF. So I just have a little identifier knowing this is a edited MP4 clip that, you know, I can no longer pan, zoom, tilt, whatever. This is the whole deal. It's going to do its export. While it's doing the export, as soon as you hit export and it starts doing its thing up here, we're going to hit export again. And this time we're going to go to the tab on the right, export 360 video. Change our location to rendered 360. And what the heck did I name the other one? Zipline 1. Typing with a microphone in the way. First half and 360. So the reason I do this is that, you know, yes, technically you can take the .insv files and you can put them into Premiere or After Effects and work with them like that. In my mind, you know, why overtax the computer when it's already going to be doing some overtaxed work? You know, it's already going to be doing more than it intends to when it's reframing the 360 stuff using the GPU. So I like to just have a 360 MP4 file that you can control. You can set the resolution, bit rate. 360 video, I just keep it at 100 megabits. Can remove grain if you want. And it'll try and clean it up some. So while it's doing that, let's go find another shot. And let's make it to drone video from the tent here. So like I said, keeping it consistent. So we want to be moving forward somewhere, which fortunately in this clip is easy to find. Let's have it transition to here. So it's marked in. Let's make a keyframe. So the other video, it ended with me zooming in. So this one, we want to start zoomed out and zoom in as well. If that makes sense. Consistent. So, some pretty long clips. 2 seconds should be plenty. And this one, instead of kind of, if I were to do the rotation here, it's like I'm winding the clip up. But if I do the rotation at the first keyframe, it's like it's going to be wound and then unwound for the second keyframe, if that makes any sense at all. When you look at the tilt and pan and roll angles, I'm kind of winding it up now. So it's going left, which means I need to move to the right, I believe. All right, cool. Zoom in at the same time because that's what the other one was doing. Change our framing so it doesn't look like it's this fisheye. Maybe back out some. Now, I mentioned the interpolation between keyframes. Let's select between the two keyframes, and we're going to select slip in, fade out. Is my guess as to what's going to work best here. So it starts moving quickly, and then it slows down at the end. Let's just be creative here. Why not? I mean, it's kind of a lousy move, but then let's do some retiming because we can. So, as it kind of jumps. Let's do another interpolation. Fade in, fade out. So it starts slow and ends slow. And kind of continue a move where the camera was kind of organically heading. And if you can try and keep it a little bit of a horizon. Not that we kept it really anywhere else. And let's end it on like a tiny planet-ish, like super zoom. Just kind of alternating back and forth between the warp and the zoom. Weird. All right. Mark out. And we're going to do the exact same things that we did a second ago. And I'm looking on my other screen and I see I didn't put the 360 clip from the other half in the right folder, but we can fix that. Zipline. Even though this isn't a zipline, it's a drone. It's a similar move. Second half, RF, and yeah, didn't put it in the right folder. Zipline 1. And do the 360 as well, so we have it. By the way, if you do the file naming and put in all the information, then you switch between reframed and 360, you're going to have to do it again. Just a little annoyance. Cool. So while that does its thing, and I'm going to assume we're not going to need the 360 clips, but hey, that way you have it. I don't remember what that's from. All right, let's start out taking the 2 reframe clips, and let's tab over to Premiere, drop them into our project, which I already made. Should be mostly identical settings, and let's just do new sequence from clip, and zipline edit. And second half, right, I see I've been recording for like 20 minutes, so this is taking me a little while. Whoa, whoa. What is that? Okay, that's his attempt at doing the optical flow, I guess, when it's spinning. So ironically, even though we didn't think we'd need the 360 clip, and I just said that, well, we're probably going to do that. Let's see, make sure this was good. Cool. And actually, first thing we should have done, just get rid of the damn audio. Nobody cares. All right. So let's get rid of that from the project because it stunk. Let's drag in that 360 render. Oh, the gremlin's back. So let's take that, put it in. Now there is a plugin that is free called GoPro FX Reframe, and you should be able to get it from Insta360's website if it didn't install at the same time as the studio software. What it does is it will basically take the 360 shot, turn it into the normal aspect ratio, or the aspect ratio you're going to determine here under projection, which is not just something that politicians do on TV. And once you've done that, you can still reframe within it, but it acts like a normal clip. So we 1920 by 1080. Cool. HD 1920 by 1080. Okay, maybe we're in... No, we definitely are. Oh, but it scaled us down to 33%. Forgot my settings. Cool. So what we can do here is we can do all of that pan, tilt, rotate, curve, and zoom, but we can get really granular and with the or really manual when it comes to the interpolation, which is fantastic. You're not limited to that basic slip in, fade out. So with that in mind, you also see it gives you these guidelines. There's something that you can drag around in here. Sure, knock yourself out. I kind of prefer just using the manual numbers, but to each their own. There's a right way and a wrong way, and you can do it the wrong way. All right, start of the clip is when it starts moving. I'm gonna yaw, which is pan, over here. And we did end up with the Hitchcock one, so let's do that. Where did nice. So there's a source operations, which is basically like defining where it begins, is my understanding. Like what it considers the base of basically 0. I'm setting under source operations, I'm setting what is 0. What do I want to be pointing forward at when nothing is set? If that makes sense. And I wasn't really paying attention and inadvertently set that, but that's not a bad thing. It just means well, I'm not that bright. So we get down here. Now notice I turned on keyframing, auto keyframing for all of them. So any move I make now will make another keyframe. I also dropped down these little carrots here, not just for rabbits. And what that does is it shows you your velocity and your keyframe graph. And you can already see once I panned the camera over, the graph is now not only the line changed, but it gave me these little Bezier handles to work with. And what that's going to do is let you control the speed pretty granularly. So it'll accelerate near the end or decelerate, whatever you feel like. All right. Cool. So why don't we just clean this up? At the very start, the very start, my keyframes were moot because I didn't really do them. And we're going to zoom in. Miss Carolina and Mr. Daniel. The other Dan. So, all right. This is a kind of glad it did that because basically it's tilting way too fast, right? Or panning, I'm sorry, way too fast. We don't want it to start whip panning until the end. And once it does, we want it to keep going. And you can see on the velocity graph here and the value graph how it's now accelerating because it's a steeper line. And by here, we want it to be doing its all around the world thing. Now, we can drill down really into it, and I'm just going to expand this here so we can see. This is your velocity here, how fast the camera is actually moving, represented by a number, and this is its actual angle, the value of the angle. So let's change these. Let's do all 4 of these points. Right-click and make the interpolation to Bezier. Now already I can see there's this weird hump here, which means it's going to have some kind of weird behavior where when it gets to this point, this keyframe, it's actually going to start going back the way it was for a second. See, it just kind of like hangs up for a second there. And we don't want that. So what we can do is, good question, what can we do? Well, first, we don't want it to be moving quickly at the start. We know that. So I'm going to take the value handle and just drag it out and make it a kind of a smoother line at first so that later in the clip, the line has to accelerate faster. We can kind of amplify that here. Now, like I said with the other clips, consistency in the movement. We want this line to kind of continue along that trajectory. We don't want it to just suddenly decide it's changing directions. So let's actually accelerate this here. We're changing the value. It's going to change the way the clip looks, but I think that looks good. Nice. Let's make it a little smoother here. We don't want this to go above or too, I mean, it can go a little bit above where it started, I guess. Oh, it doesn't. But yeah, we definitely don't want to making a big arc to the right before spinning left. If that makes any sense. And actually, it doesn't really matter if it decelerates at the end. Now, what I'm not liking is this kind of coming to a point here. I want it to do smooth. It's a little better. Again, you can just finesse it, and none of this is possible within Insta360 Studio. Velocity is very kind of odd here. I'm going to bet it's not going to play very smoothly, but I'd love to be wrong. Yeah, you see it kind of hung up there for a second, even though the value is, I don't really understand that. Even though the value is consistently on the same trajectory, we just want to go ahead and move these handles together and try and keep the value of the velocity going the same way too, if we can. Might not be worth really trying to get into it. I mean, it's not terrible. The one other thing I don't like, let's just close that caret. Give it to a pony, and the rotation kind of sucks here. Wow, going half an hour. If you're still watching, you get a medal. I'm not going to watch this. I have enough medals. So okay, -6, and that looks level-ish. Let me go to 12. Why do we go to 12? Oh, because that looks level. All right, let's do kind of the same thing. but just accelerating it to the end. Again, we want it to start on something of a flat trajectory. And as it gets closer, then it can start speeding up its move. I mean, it's not bad. Maybe the zoom, let's line that up a little better. Try and only move the second keyframe. Make it Bezier 2, Bezier. I'm flipping and flopping. I don't know. I don't know which is correct. So, one thing I think I'm pretty sure of is that I want it to spin a lot faster at the end into the second shot. A lot faster. Fortunately, it looks like our velocity or path here, the value path of the pan is all right so far, but let's take this even more. Do another full rotation. See what happens. Live dangerously. Michael Scott. I mean, I'd love to hold for a second longer. Whatever. It's fine. I'd like ideally to accelerate even more, but it's just not worth getting into unless that did it there. I guess that accelerated a tiny bit better. So, to transition between these two shots, first thing I want to do is cut off a few frames because you need, and this is kind of my fault for not thinking of it in the studio program, you do need a few frames on either side of either clip, like cut off a few here, cut off a few here, and that's what it's going to use to transition. Those are the parts of the clip it's going to end up overlaying. So let's take a few off. Actually, we're going to take more than a few here because we don't need, I mean, that's a good, probably enough right there. Close the gap. Now, built into Premiere is a set of plugins called somewhere. It's not called somewhere. Immersive Video. These are, they used to be called Skybox, I think, made by a company, Metal, who makes a more complicated series of 360 plugins that are far beyond anything we really need today, or usually ever. What are we going to do with you? You know what? Now that I'm actually thinking about it, we don't need... These plugins are great for when you're actually editing a 360 clip, which I didn't think about. Not so necessary. Like if you're going to render out a 360 clip that can be panned around, these basically let you do the effects that you can do in other places. But because a 360 clip has so much more going on, it's stitching, it needs to be seamless, that's where this comes in. But we can just use, if you have Red Giant installed, where is transitions, Red Giant Universe Transitions. I'm a big fan of Warp. Not big enough of a fan to add it to my favorites that I don't use, but so what Warp's going to do is it's going to give us a couple of options, whether it's zooming in, zooming out, or sliding. Now, for this, we're going to want to do slide. And slide to the right because the camera's panning left, I think. Get an idea of what it's doing already. Kind of blurring it and whipping, like almost like a whip pan in. Let's see. Let's kill some of that blur. That's not zoom. Oh, it is zoom blur. That's kind of weird. Can we feather the edge? Doesn't seem like it really wants to. Well, let's just see what it looks like. Kind of lousy. All right, what is about soft edge wipe? That is quite literally what I'm trying to do, just different. Left edge, so it's going to move right. Let's go. You're really not going to let me go up? Okay, wow. Kind of a disappointing evening. I'm going to drop my ice cream. That's not true. Yeah, that stinks. Swish pan? I doubt it. This is half of what this is. It's just trial and error. Oh, maybe this is better. Yeah. Direction to the right. If you like hit an arrow and go forward, backward a frame, it's going to want to get out of your transition in the effects panel. So just watch that. Yes, that is exactly what I had in mind. Let's do a render. So it needs to spin faster. It kind of took its time deciding what to do there. Yeah, I mean, for what it is what it is. Now, real quick, let's take the other 360 clip, drop it in properly. Just for sake of showing you plugins, mark in, mark out, drag it down, and we're going to do new sequence from clip. Now, this sequence is, if we scroll over, the full 5760 by 2880. I believe you can go under sequence settings. Yeah, so the VR properties, it says equirectangular, monoscopic. That's the kind of footage Insta360 shoots. It's capturing 360 degrees horizontally, 180 degrees vertically in one big square. So equirectangular, monoscopic. And, you can throw in other words and just confuse people. Now, I think, is that all I have to do? Don't really do this. But maybe. Honestly, don't even remember which one VR is. There it is. So I'm just dragging the VR display button down onto my little toolbar here. Perfect. I didn't have to do anything else. So now we can actually pan around in 360 in Premiere. It limits you to this weird square, though. God knows why. But what this means is, this gets turned off when you export it. This is what you would export. And like YouTube, for example, would know this is the kind of video you can pan around, tilt around, that it has all of the information. Because when you export it, there should be an option somewhere. Video is VR under your video settings. So if we were to do just match source, that's a pretty high bit. I mean, it's half the bit rate we took it out of Studio program with, but it'll do. Video is VR, monoscopic, 360, 180, checks out. Now, why would we do this? And what were those plugins I was talking about earlier? But let's think which of these makes sense. None of them really make sense. I'm gonna, you know what? This is not included in Premiere, but let's go into Metal Mantra, which is the souped up version of immersive video. And where is BJX, I believe, is what I want. We're gonna select a model. Why not the submarine, the Red October, if this works? Which I'm not sure it did. Oh, oh my god. This is why I have a problem. See how it, I mean, this is kind of crazy to me that still that this kind of thing works. I just dropped this 3D model in Premiere into a 360 clip. It looks as though I'm moving it in 3D space because it just knows to warp it accordingly, because this is designed by the people who make these 360 plugins. And I'm just going to move it. This is so stupid. I don't think it's going to... Well, I know it's not going to move because we haven't, like, tracked it or anything like that. That's a whole nother animal. But we can keyframe it, probably. I am making this up as I go. I've never really tried this. Yeah, that's pretty funny, actually, to me. Oh! And we crashed Premiere. And I think that's a sign that that's all she wrote for this evening. But that's just a little bit of an overview of what you can do. And maybe if you're interested, we'll get into After Effects later, where you can do like really like camera tracking, and you can erase things like content aware fill and stuff in Photoshop if, you know, for example, someone in a different department would... Okay, now I'm getting in trouble. All right.